Hello, Mark.
Thanks for joining us.
Sure.
The Respect for Marriage Act said that the federal government will recognize any union that the state where it was conducted said that it was valid. And it added religious protections for pastors or churches who may decide they don't want to conduct gay weddings on their religious grounds. Why did you vote against it?
Yeah, because the religious protections aren't real. Listen, I'm a religious liberty lawyer. I mean, this is what I do. It's a constitutional lawyer before I ran for Attorney General and now in the Senate. And I can tell you that you can drive a truck through those supposed religious liberty protections. This bill gives to individuals and organizations a right to sue other people, including churches, including probably Christian colleges and universities, certainly including Christian business people or others in the public square. You can sue them under this bill if they don't do what you want them to do. And so I think what you're going to see is another wave of suits against bakers and against website designers and against those who say that it's against their religious beliefs to participate in a wedding ceremony that's against their faith. And I'm opposed to that. I think there should be real religious liberty protections. And of course, I'm also opposed to the Obergefell decision. I think it's just wrong on the Constitution from almost 10 years ago now. And so I'm not in favor of codifying that into federal law.
Democrats who drafted this proposal and energized the push behind it pointed to the Dobbs decision, specifically the portion where Justice Thomas suggested that the court should reconsider rulings that legalize gay marriage, the Obergefell decision that you just mentioned there. When we take your vote on this bill and your statement just now, does that mean that you want to see the U.S. or Missouri move to ban gay marriage?
Well, Missouri can't because it's the law of the land, according to the U.S. Supreme Court interpreting the Constitution. So while I think the decision is wrongly decided, I also don't think it's going to go anywhere. I mean, I think it's going to be the law of the land for probably ever. I mean, I don't see the Supreme Court changing that. I don't think anybody is seriously litigating to try to change it. You said the Dobbs decision, but what you cited is not in the Dobbs decision. It is a single concurrence from Justice Thomas that is his own opinion, which he's welcome to express his own views. Justices do that all the time. That was one vote out of 9. So I don't think Obergefell is going anywhere anytime soon.
I raised his opinion because at the time you specifically said you agreed with portions of Justice Thomas. I wondered if you agreed with that part of it, that you wanted to see, and you just said you disagreed with Obergefell.
Yeah, I do. I think Obergefell is wrongly decided, but do I think it's going to be overturned? No. And do I think that ought to be a top project? No.
I see. On top projects and on priorities of the party, a recent Gallup poll, which surveys the views and values of Americans, found that in 2022, support for gay marriage reached an all-time high at 71%. You just spoke to us in the last week or two in the aftermath of the midterm elections about the Republican need to build a majority party. How can you govern? How can you build a majority party standing among the 29%?
Well, I might remind you that I represent the state of Missouri in the United States Senate, and the voters of Missouri overwhelmingly, by over, I believe, 70%, approved a constitutional amendment to our state constitution saying that their preference was for marriage to be between one man and one woman. And I respect the voters of my state. I also agree with them on substance. So my view is the Constitution leaves this matter to the states. It is silent. It does not dictate a view of marriage one way or another, by the way. The federal Constitution. Now, the Supreme Court disagrees with that. That's the Obergefell decision. And they have said that the Constitution commands same-sex marriage in every single state. I disagree with that outcome, but it's the law of the land.
I want to pivot quickly to some of your recent comments and work on the issues surrounding free speech and big tech as it relates to Apple. I understand Tim Cook and Elon Musk have had some sort of a conversation and worked things out. There were some concerns that the App Store might remove or limit access to Twitter over concerns of some of the types of speech that they feared might proliferate in the aftermath of some of the purge going on at Twitter headquarters there. But I want to understand what your line is between government limiting free speech and private companies or individuals freely associating with content or views that they wish to. How is that an imposition on free speech?
How is what an imposition on free speech? The App Store using its monopoly power to shut out Twitter? Is that your question?
Well, monopoly would be a different discussion, wouldn't it?
Well, they are a monopoly. The Apple Store is a monopoly. Apple is a monopoly. And the App Store is, I think, unquestionably a monopoly, and they frankly ought to face antitrust scrutiny for it. So yeah, I'm concerned when the government and big tech monopolies partner together. There's a history of this, by the way. It's happened in the past. It happened in the 1930s in Europe, where you had big government and big business work together to force a particular agenda on the rest of society. That's what this administration is trying to do. When I say this administration, I mean Joe Biden. And by the way, we know that thanks to Missouri's lawsuit currently proceeding in federal court, which has turned up evidence that Biden officials met with members of big tech, leaders of big tech, and worked actively to coerce big tech leaders to censor speech of otherwise First Amendment speech, protected speech that they, the government, didn't like. I think that is both illegal and unconstitutional. So yes, I'm concerned about it. And yes, I think that Tim Cook should not be able to use his monopoly power to censor speech that he doesn't like. Why does Tim Cook not like Twitter? Probably because he gets criticized on Twitter. Well, I've got news for him. That's America, and they ought to welcome that. But Apple doesn't care too much for America these days, as you can see from where they make their products, overwhelmingly in China. 95%, I believe, of their products are now made in China, and they are Apple, actively working with the Chinese government to censor and shut down and quell speech and protests in China. It's despicable.
I'm unaware of anybody being censored or banned or restricted on Twitter because they simply criticized Tim Cook. Instead, rather, and maybe ironically, people are being restricted on Twitter for using anti-Semitic or racist language, the very kind of content that was on the rise in the 1930s that you're just alluding to.
That's not why Apple was going to ban them. It threatened to ban Twitter from the App Store. That's nonsense. Elon Musk has taken additional steps to get rid of that kind of hate speech. In fact, as you can see, if you look at Twitter and look at the data Twitter's released, that kind of hate speech has dropped precipitously, and I'm glad it has, since he has taken the reins. And we all know why these companies, whether it's Apple or whether it's the European Union, why they're going after Twitter. It's suddenly become a haven for free speech, a little bit more free speech friendly. But the left doesn't believe in free speech anymore. And certainly Joe Biden doesn't believe in free speech, which is why he is actively coercing big tech companies to carry out censorship on his behalf. That is unconstitutional. And I look forward to the further depositions of the leaders of his administration as to what they've been doing with this sort of collusion.
All right, Senator, I have some follow-ups, but I'm afraid we're out of time. We'll have to connect with you later.
All right, talk to you soon.
We'd like to set the record straight to add some important context there for any viewers who might have heard those remarks from Senator Hawley and heard him suggesting that somehow censoring hate speech might incite some of the same hatred we saw in the early 1930s. It was that very hate speech that was, in fact, at the center of much of the censorship or the different information that was flagged, removed, or filtered from social media. In fact, as soon as Elon Musk took over Twitter, there was an immediate surge in that kind of anti-Semitic hate speech, specifically directed at Jewish people. Musk made a specific point in his public takeover of that company to reinstate Kanye West, now calling himself Ye, the rapper whose account was suspended for anti-Semitic hate speech. In fact, just while we were talking with Senator Hawley, Kanye West went on a conspiracy theory program, one that was hosted by someone who Musk's Twitter still won't allow back on that social media platform. And he said this. You see it on your screen. He praised Adolf Hitler. He went on to deny the Holocaust. Elon Musk himself has not said anything this extreme, this egregious, but he has taken aim at Jewish Americans, including Alexander Vindman. Vindman is a 20-year Army combat veteran. You might remember him from some of the impeachment trials and testimony of former President Trump. Vindman was injured in combat, awarded the Purple Heart, also happens to be a Jewish immigrant born in Ukraine. His family fled the Soviet Union and migrated to the U.S. when he was just a child. In a recent tweet, Elon Musk described Vindman as both a puppeteer and a puppet, and questioned who pulls his strings. That explanation, that illustration that he's using, is anti-Semitic, according to Jewish publications. A Jewish publication said that Musk's tweet, deliberately or not, evoked an anti-Semitic trope that Jews control positions of power. These are the types of speech, and these are the types of speakers that are being promoted on Twitter's platform, re-platformed, brought back into the limelight, and Elon Musk making a point to say we're not going to limit or censor or remove those types of speakers. Also, advertisers, nearly half of the major advertisers on Twitter have started exercising their free speech, their right of free association by pulling their paid advertisements from that platform for fear that their brand would be associated next to some of that racist or anti-Semitic commentary or images. The idea about the Apple App Store censoring Twitter or removing Twitter came from Yoel Roth. Yoel Roth was the person who Elon Musk promoted to the head of public safety before he later stepped down and said he feared that Twitter was heading in the wrong direction, something that could be damaging and harmful in the way that it allows or any kind of hateful speech to proliferate. We'll leave it there for now. We look forward to having Senator Hawley back on our program to talk more about big tech and where you get your information and what you can trust.